Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Kate Loewald. I'm the founding producer of PlayCo, and I'm really happy that you're joining us for this Play Club event with Leah C. Gardiner. I'm in the PlayCo office in New York City, in Lenape-Hoking, the land of the Lenape people. And Play Club is a series that we started very shortly after the theater shut down last year. We started this program in April as a way to stay connected to theater, stay connected with the artists and audiences and our whole community, reading plays together, talking about plays together. So we're very happy and honored to have Leah here with us today to talk with us. Leah is an Obie Award-winning director, and her recent shows include For Colored Girls at the Public Theater, If Pretty Hurts at Playwrights Horizons, and many more in New York and across the country and internationally. Leah is also a producer and a writer, and we will talk about those things probably later. So I'd love to just start our conversation by saying that Leah and I were trying to figure out how we met, actually, and we couldn't figure that out, but we realized that we first worked together. Leah first worked with PlayCo way back in the early days of our theater's history in 2001, before we were even producing full productions. We were doing a series of workshop productions, and Leah directed a workshop production of Bintu by Kofi Kwaole, who's a playwright from the Ivory Coast. So it's been a while that we've been in the world together.
It has. Hi, Kate.
Hi.
So nice to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. It's nice to go back.
Really happy that you're here.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So, and then the next time we worked together was quite a while later. In 2014, Leah directed the production of Generations by Debbie Tucker Green that PlayCo co-produced with Soho Rep. So we'll be talking about that as well very shortly. But I wanted to start out, Leah, I think you started your life as an artist, as a poet. Is that right?
That is right. Yes.
Yeah.
I was a poet. I studied in high school. I had a number of poetry mentors, Sonia Sanchez being one of them. I went to the Gardiner School for the Arts for poetry in Pennsylvania and studied under Elizabeth Alexander. She was my mentor when I was in college at University of Pennsylvania. And then when I graduated, I had the pleasure of working with Ntozake Shange. So I had some really great teachers, wonderful, amazing mentors.
Yeah. So how did you move from poetry into theater?
That's a great question. When I was at Penn, I realized that, I'd loved theater when I was a child. My mother packed, I think it must have been 2 cars full of 14 girls. And 2 station wagons, I believe, and we headed down to a theater in Philadelphia called the Freedom Theater, which was a Black theater, and we all had our pajamas on, and we went to see theater for my birthday, for slumber party. So theater's always been a very strong sort of part of my upbringing in my life, and I felt that when I got to Penn, I realized that I loved poetry, but there was something about, I was also a dancer growing up, and there was something about moving sort of words in 3 dimensions and the idea of what that meant in terms of storytelling. So in my senior year at Penn, I produced A Raisin in the Sun, and we brought in a lot of money. We started this organization called the Penn Black Arts League. And then I realized, my goodness, this is possible. I could do this. I could make money doing this. So I moved to London after that and worked in the theater there. Came back to the States, worked in the theater here, and then as producer, and then applied to Yale drama for directing and got in. And then that was it. That's history, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you mentioned the idea of moving words around in 3 dimensions, and I think that's a really helpful way to think about your work from what I know of your work and how you approach theater, and certainly a strong connection with that original impulse to poetry. You talked about your poetry mentors. Are there theater people who were important early influences for you?
Absolutely. When I was at Yale, in my second, I think must have been the end of our second year, a classmate and I were asked to come down to New York to interview with George C. Wolfe to assist him on was it The Tempest in the Park? Yes, The Tempest in the Park. And I did, and I got the job, and that was history. George and I have remained very close. He's been an incredible mentor and supporter of my work. There's a project that I'm currently working on that he's artistic producing. So we, I always call him if I ever have a question about anything, or if I'm stuck in a moment, or if I'm writing something and I just want to run it past him. I mean, he's a tremendous, tremendous mentor still today.
Yeah.
I feel very blessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are.
Thank you, Kate.
And he is too.
Yeah,
with you.
that's right. He
Yeah.
sure is.
Well, I'd love to move to your work with Debbie Tucker Green, and thinking about how Debbie's plays look on the page. They do look like poetry. They're laid out in that way. And before you directed the production we worked on together, Generations, you directed an important production of another of Debbie's plays, Born Bad, at Soho Rep. And maybe let's start, if you could talk about just what drew you to Debbie's work.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think I should go back and first talk about how Debbie and I met, because I was really drawn to Debbie as a human first, before I even read her work. She and Roy Williams came over. New Dramatists had an exchange, a British-American playwright exchange. And I think there was also an Australian-American playwright exchange. So they came as, I believe this was 2000, maybe. They came over, and I was a director in residence at New Dramatists at the time. And so the 3 of us spent a lot of time together. I had lived in England for a while, as I said, and we just hit it off. I mean, the 3 of us, we had such an amazing time together in New York. So I had the fortunate pleasure of directing both of their plays here in New York. But with Debbie in particular, as you say, I mean, when I read her first play, Born Bad, and sort of saw how it was structured, she uses the word bitch 20 times I think on the first page in that play, or maybe the first page and a half. But the way in which the cadence, it's a Jamaican American family, and the way in which the rhythms and cadences of the words around that one word speak to the idea, the metaphoric idea of what that word means, the sort of the implications of the weight of that word really resonated with me. And I got very excited when I saw how insane that choice was, and how do you sort of make that live and work in 3 dimensions. So as I continue to read and I sort of continue to discover the depth and breadth of that play, it's a very short play. I mean, I think it's 45 minutes in total, maybe. But the impact of the words and the way that, as I say, sort of there's a kind of rolling effect, rolling thunder. I used in the production a kind of heartbeat undertone that progressed, that you really weren't even quite aware of, that progressed in intensity to sort of to support and mimic how her words increased in intensity. And the storytelling increased in intensity. So that's the beautiful thing about working with what I feel is poetry on the page, is that as you're bringing it to life, you really have to tap into many different elements of storytelling: sound, lights, set. I mean, it's an incredible opportunity for every aspect of the theater to work together, dramaturgy even. And it really is, it's for me as an artist, it is my most delightful time when I am able to bring words like that to the stage.
Yeah. And I remember that production vividly. And one of the many things that was so striking about it is that, you know, the staging was very simple. It was, stark is not the right word, because I remember sort of patterns and color, but it was very simple. Mm-hmm. So my experience of it was that it was the words, it was the actors, and then it was this very precise, rich visual that created this world that was very powerful.
Thank you for that, Kate. My father is an amateur photographer, and I grew up with photographs and pictures around me. And I think when I direct, I really do try to make pictures. I mean, just very visceral and vibrant pictures, and the experience of remembering a photograph, I think is really essential to how I work. And in this particular play, when I talked to my designers originally, I said, you know, I really see each scene is like a snapshot. And so I remember we had 5 chairs, and you're right, there was sort of wallpaper on the back wall with 2 invisible doors, with the brilliant Mimi Lien designed the set, and then carpeting on a square floor. And at the end of each scene, I would have the actors in the dark move chairs around to create a different tableau, to create a different picture. And one of my actors, bless her heart, when we got into tech, it never dawned on me that someone maybe have night blindness. And so, you know, when we first started tech, and Michael Hilbusky, the brilliant Michael Hilbusky, did the lights, and we're sort of, you know, I'm asking the actors move around it. As you know, you have such little time in tech. One of the actors, she was working it, and she was finally like, I can't see.
Oh.
And it was one of those beautiful moments in tech where you suddenly had to just take a moment to stop, regroup, and figure out, right, how are we going to make this work the way that it needs to work, to make these actors feel safe and to tell the story. And it actually, as is always the beauty of the theater, it really served the play in a much richer way, where there was such a faint bit of light that you, the audience, could sort of see how movement was occurring, as if with an old camera, you know, a new shutter.
Yeah.
And a new picture was being formed and shown. I'm sorry if you hear Gryffindor. He's quite loud, and I can't keep him from barking, so forgive me. Anyway, that was sort of the idea behind that production.
Yeah, the happy accidents of theater. Yeah,
they're brilliant. Yeah. They're so brilliant.
Yeah. Well, So let's move into generations. And Leah, would you just, because I suspect probably not everyone who's with us right now saw that production. So could you just tell us a little bit about that play?
So Generations is a play that examines AIDS in South Africa with actually not talking about the AIDS epidemic in South Africa, which is a very sort of Debbie Tucker Green way of approaching theater, as I understand it. There's a family, a generation of grandparents, mother and father, boyfriend, girlfriend, and then younger sister, and a choir of, I believe Debbie requested a choir of 21. If I'm not mistaken, I think we ended up somewhere between 10 and 15.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of in traditional African response, call and response, sort of African tradition, call and response between the choir and the family. Each one of these family members is dying, except for the two grandparents. And so we watch as audience members and participate in the passing of these souls, but we're not really aware that that's what's happening to them until the very end of the play, because her language for AIDS is and sexual intercourse is cook. How did it go? Something like, did you know I could cook? Or did you say I could cook? You said I could cook. I can't cook. You can cook. No, you can't cook. I can cook. Will you cook? Can I cook? Can you cook, Mama? And so again, it's similar to the B word in the sense that she uses cook as a metaphor, as a poetic metaphor for how sexual intercourse can in fact cook you. It can in fact kill you if you are not careful. And so the way in which I opted to do the production was very immersive. And so I worked, Sarah Benson, who, as you know, is a brilliant director unto herself. And I had a very long conversation about how we could sort of turn her theater, where you guys chose to have it, which was down, remind me, is at Walker Street?
Walker Space, yeah.
Walker Space, thank you. Into sort
Soho
of
Rep space, yeah.
Soho Rep space, thank you.
Yeah.
It's been so long since we've been in the theater, Kate.
I know, we're forgetting everything.
So it's refreshing and beautiful to have this conversation. Thank you. Thank you for jogging my memory. But I spoke to Sarah and the artist and the set designer, Arnolfo Moldano, who is just brilliant, about creating one long, elongated space so that when the audience walked in the door, they could sort of see into the back of the theater in the same way semen, when it entered a vagina, can go all the way in and enter into the vaginal space. So I remember sitting down for the first time with Arnolfo. I didn't know Arnolfo. Arnolfo didn't know me. And I sort of grabbed a piece of paper and, as we directors do, and I'm just going to show you, I sort of said, Arnolfo, I don't know how to describe it, but, there's this, it's like a space, like the vagina. And I don't know if you can see this. And I sort of drew this picture. And I said, when semen goes into a vagina and they swim around and, they don't know where they're going and it can lead to death if you're not protected. And Arnolfo goes, actually, no, I don't know. I'm gay. And so,
You stumped him.
That was the beginning of, what has become an incredibly beautiful friendship. And I mean, what he did with that space, I knew I wanted it to feel like a South African township. And my composer, Bongi Duma, who is just extraordinary, is from Durban. And a number of cast members were also from Durban or in that area. So I met with him. We had lots and lots of images and photographs. And he helped Arnolfo and myself sort of figure out how to really make the space feel like a village in Durban. And I feel like we successfully achieved it. It was just incredible.
Shall we look at some pictures?
Yes, let's.
Yeah,
That would be
we
great.
we have, I think, 3 pictures. Let's see if we can pull them up.
Okay, great. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
here they come.
Okay, great. Oh, yeah. That's beautiful. So this is towards the end of the production. And you can see Matt Fry, who is just extraordinary, worked with, he's a lighting designer, and you can see in the back, that's that back wall that I was requesting we have as the, the energy sort of moved to that, what I called the tunnel of light. And he actually used, I believe, the crates that a number of audience members were sitting on, milk crates. He used a number of them to behind that curtain, or I think that was a curtain, the drop, to kind of create patterns. And so what ended up happening was it sort of felt very angelic. And you have that this moment of Thule comforting Kona after Kona played the mother and Thule the grandmother, after Kona lost her 2 daughters, both very young. One was, I think, 14. One was the early 20s. The girlfriend's boyfriend, early 20s, and her husband. And this is that moment of embrace.
And you can also see the audience there. The audience was kind of all around.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I wanted the audience to sort of feel like they themselves could be any one of these people at any given time. And our choir of 13, I believe, is how many we had, sort of sat around in sort of interspersed between audience members. And at the very, very beginning of the production, as the audience was entering in and taking their seats, so were the choir. So we were never made aware until after the production began that there was a choir, until you read the reviews, of course, when they said so.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Ah, yes. So we had a that is what we called the kitchen, and it really was a very small. What was that, Kate? It was sort of just like a
like a countertop.
Like a counter, yes,
Yeah.
but a
sort of makeshift.
a makeshift countertop. That's perfect. Thank you. And on it, we put a little tiny, two burner. And then as the audience came in, because the word cook was used so often in the script, I thought it would be really nice to have our audience sort of smell the smells of this culture. And so we were actually cooking up food that was eaten, that Thule started an hour beforehand every night, stirring. And there's lots and lots of garlic. I just remember, the smell of garlic. It was delightful. And onions, and then we passed around food. Oh, wasn't that fun? It was so beautiful.
Yeah, those were the
And you can see, right? You can see the corrugated in the back, the corrugated metal, which is found on a number of homes in this village that we referenced. And Arnolfo put it throughout and around the entire theater. So, yeah. Yes, and then that's a larger shot of the kitchen area, and you can see this is Kai, who is the young woman who, she was a high schooler at the time. We found her brilliant actress, and I had that little that sort of piece of burlap on the floor. The audience was sort of walking over it. And then as the show, we progressed to 5 minutes, she came out and she just lay on it. And, was sort of playing with whatever that object was in front of her. And there's Kona, who played her mother, up in the back on the left-hand side, and she was walking up to take her seat, and she was chatting with the audience, and it was very interactive, and it was really quite stunning and beautiful. And you can see the floor. I don't remember how many, how was it, several tons, is that right, of this tennis court clay that we had shipped in, that we put throughout and made the flooring for, which was, again, incredible. That's Arnolfo for you.
Yeah. Thank you, Charlene, for those photos.
Indeed.
Yeah, Leah, I was thinking when we were talking to prep for this, you were talking about how you feel Generations is a perfect example of your work. And I wonder if you could say a little bit about how so.
Sure. So there's, with that script, as you and I discussed earlier, there are a few words. There are very few stage directions. And the way in which the actors say the lines are very sort of melodic, and one actor relies on the other actor. It's extremely ensemble. And the play is also epic in scope. I tend to work on plays and musicals, classics that feel very epic in scope. And it took me about 10 years to realize that was actually how I approached theater, and the kind of theater that I was attracted to and that I connected to. So there really is, I mean, there was one moment in this play where the language really turned into music, and music is also a very important component of the work that I do. There were lines that sort of, I'll say, for example, this is not it, but if you said I can cook, and the way in which it, if you said I can cook, or if you said I can cook, each actor had one line. They still had to place emphasis on, if you said I can cook, that final cook, but they had to sing the rhythms in the way in which the line was meant to be read, were it said by one person. And I think that's a very clear indication of how I approach and hear the rhythms and music within the language and within plays. And so that's another example, I think, of how I sort of my signature. I mean, when people talk to me about my work, they say that it's very clear and it's very precise. And I think if you ask my husband in terms of how I keep this house, it's very clear and very precise. I think that's more about my compulsive obsessive behavior than anything. But there's a very kind of a specificity that I am interested in, because I think that ultimately movement and music, lights and sound and set, they all come from the beginning. And for me, the beginning is sort of the epic nature in which we tell stories, which comes from words.
Yeah. Well, and I would just say, in my experience, yes, there is precision in your work for sure, but it's a precision that just lets all of multiplicity flow. So it's not, I mean, there's no rigidity in it. It just is a kind of precision that allows things to open up and expand, if that makes any sense. Yeah,
absolutely. I do yoga nidra, chakra meditation. I don't know if you know what that is, but part of that meditation is, I meditate a lot, and part of that meditation is opening up all of your chakras so that energy can flow from the bottom of your feet, which are connected to the earth, all the way through to your top. through your crown chakra. And there's something very important to me about how specificity and openness can facilitate access to emotion in a way that we may not be familiar with or comfortable with if we are closed and closed up. So that's really, I think, I tend to, the way that I work, and I didn't, again, it took me a long time to understand this. I sort of work the British way, which is from the outside in versus the inside out. And for a number of American directors and producers, actors and producers, that takes some getting used to, because it is the kind of that, because once you get here, then it just sort of explodes emotionally.
Yeah.
I don't know if that made any sense, but
It did, absolutely. I'm sorry if people are hearing street sounds. I'm on a busy street, and so there may be sounds of honking or there's a truck backing up. So I apologize if it's distracting.
You have street sounds, I have Gryffindor. We're okay.
So I think we are able to listen to a piece of music from the show, and maybe Charlene, if you're able to play that, and it's fine if we see your screen while you're doing that. We could just listen to a little bit of it, and then Leah, when you're ready, you can just tell us about that song and
Great.
How it is an example of the sound of the show.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Siyahamba siyaphambili sakhe isizwe noma kunzima siyahamba siyaphambili sakhe isizwe noma kunzima vumani vumani imnandi lengoma vumani vumani lengoma imnandi lengoma vumani vumani imnandi lengoma nampaba yasishiya sobonana kwelizayo nampaba yasishiya sobonana kwelizayo vumani lengoma imnandi lengoma vumani
Oh boy, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Ongi Duma.
Yeah.
Just extraordinary. I mean, I'm almost in tears, just bringing back that somehow, that just the sense, using that sense to tap the emotion of that show. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you feel that music in your core. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so amazing what you guys do at PlayCo, working just with, international productions. And I mean, I don't know Bungi's language. Bungi, English is not his first language, but yet we were able to collaborate and come up with that emotional experience, which when someone died, when someone crossed over, someone being one of the characters in the show, I had lanterns sort of spread throughout the theater, and each one of the cast, and they were sort of between audience, you had to walk through audience members, and each cast member was assigned a lantern that was on until it was their time. And they would walk through, this dirge would be sung, and they would walk through the audience and they would turn out their lantern and sit down. And you really didn't quite understand what that was. I was really trying to sort of work on a very subconscious, unconscious level. But that dirge created a kind of emotion, and it had an emotional impact that we could understand had something to do with loss. Even though we didn't know what the words said, we could feel what the words meant. And just oh my goodness, I can't.
Yeah.
It was just heaven. It really was. It was heaven. It was just one of the most exhilarating collaborative experiences, that show, with all of the, I think there, how many of us in total? Maybe there were like 30 of us, 45 of us.
Yeah.
Everyone, we were all committed to the exact same mission. It was just beautiful.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm mindful of the time is flying by. Is there anything else that you would like to share about Generations, Leah, or shall we move on?
No, I wondered, do you have that? We had talked about a second song. Can you play a little bit of that?
Oh,
second
yeah.
one,
Charlene, are you able to? Charlene is magically backstage, and you could.
You don't have to play the whole thing, though.
Yeah.
I just want to
Yeah.
reference it just to give a different texture of what the production was like.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think we're hearing it.
Mm-mm.
No, that's okay. It may be too complicated to make it work.
Yeah.
I was really interested in sort of showing a different, there was that dirge, but then there was also another kind of sound that Bongi and the choir made, which was just sort of this exuberant, exhilarating celebration of culture and life. And it was really the sort of the juxtaposition, again, on a very subconscious level, of crossing over and living.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was Generations. So
Yeah.
Move on.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think your recent show for Colored Girls is something that many people saw and loved and was really important to so many people. And you mentioned that Ntozake Shange was an early mentor of yours too, which is amazing. So I think we would just love to hear about that show. And, you talked a lot about what Generations brought to you and what you brought to Generations. And I just love to hear whatever you'd like to share about For Colored Girls.
Yeah, I mean, I think in many ways it's a similar kind of experience, right? With Ntozake, with that particular script, I mean, she's written many poems about the Black female experience. And this really is our iconic play, right? I mean, this is an absolute celebration of who we are, and on every level, and what our journeys on this earth are like. And I was very much interested when I first met with my designers. I made it very clear to them that I wanted this production to capture the beauty, again, in a very epic sense, of what it is like to be a Black woman, and how sort of to create from the beginning of a Black woman's young life to a Black woman as she grows and develops. And so my set designer, who Myung-hee Cho, who is she's the head of the design department at UCLA, and is just this incredible human, incredible designer. And we tried many different forms, and then of a design that would sort of offer a kind of celebration, not only for the play, but also for Ntozake, because she recently crossed over while we were designing the production. And so, or had recently when we began to design it. So we came up with an ankh, a shape of an ankh, which is an Egyptian symbol for fertility and life, and had sort of these beautiful crystals that we wanted to sort of represent. I was interested in every element of the earth. I wanted sort of the texture of the earth, the sky. If we wanted it to rain, we at one point in early stages of tech, rain actually came down at the end. We sort of ended up having to pull that. And you know, I was really interested in sort of what the rainbow aspect of who we are as women, someone as fair as I am to someone as richly complected as Okwe, for example. I really wanted the metaphor of rainbow to span the entire our race. And you know, the casting at the public was just great about that, and worked to find a cast that really represented all of us. And then I was also really interested in how we, you know, when someone sees us on the street, they don't know where we're from. They don't know what languages we speak, and where, you know, there's so often where we're just put into categories. Oh, she's a Black woman. She's a Black woman. I think, you know, there's a shift is beginning, thank goodness, where people are starting to think very differently and understanding that we are very different. We're human. And so I, through the support of the estate, we took words that were written in English and turned them into French. And I had a bicultural actress who speaks French, speak French in places, and then a Latinx actress spoke Spanish, which was originally in the script, but then more Spanish was added. So really just sort of looking at us in the diaspora, again, on a sort of epic global sense, who we are as people. And I think that that's just how my mind, you know, my mind really does work in a very, in a large space in that way. When I first spoke with my costume designer, Tony Leslie James, and I was talking about sort of, you know, honoring our ancestors, again, because Ntozake was now on the other side. What can we do? How can we honor our ancestors? And so Tony and I went back and forth. We sort of originally had images of famous Black women on the clothes, and we realized, oh, that's not working. And then, you know, we talked about maybe family members. And then Tony asked the cast to send them photographs of their families. And as it turns out, women, and their families, and that was sort of the direction that we ended up choosing. And so, and I also wanted to honor the original production in the silhouettes of the clothes by really leaning into what they did when that production first occurred in the mid-70s in New York, the very first production of it, and the Broadway production of it then. So, yeah, I mean, I really think, as you're saying, Kate, kind of taking, I mean, there's a lot more, of course. I'm just sort of skimming through.
Yeah.
Because I really did. I mean, I worked extensively with the script and with the design, with the actors on just with the choreographer, really layering in bits and by bit by bit by bit, this way, of course, as I described earlier, to kind of create a what I feel is an incredibly powerful and emotional production that I'm extremely proud of.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad so many people got to see it.
Yeah.
It really was another one of those that you'll always forever cherish and keep dear to the heart.
Yeah. Well, I want to leave a little time for questions if anyone who's with us wants. So if anyone has a question, maybe put it in the chat. And while you're doing that, I want to ask Leah one last question. What have you been doing this year? And and where are you heading next as an artist?
Good question. So let's see. So when lockdown first started, I wrote a lot of poetry, and I'm very excited about it. It's actually pretty good. So I've been working a lot on that collection of poems, and I took a screenwriting class, which I'm very excited about. Learned screenwriting. I have directed a short film and am now attached to a feature that I am currently working on. So I thought that it would be great to learn how screenwriters write, because I understand and know how playwrights write, but to be respectful and honor my screenwriter in the way that I have, I hope, worked and respected my playwrights, I wanted to know how it's done. And so I spent a fair amount of time learning screenwriting, and then of course working on this film. And then I've done a reading, which was just a blast. There's a commercial musical that I am working on, and we did a reading recently that, I mean, it is just, oh my God, it's a beautiful piece of theater. I cannot wait for that to.
When is that? Well, who knows?
Well,
none of us know anything.
No,
Sorry, I withdraw the question.
That's okay. We're developing. It's developing.
Yeah.
But working with collaborators that I just adore. And there are other projects, that I've been working on. There's another commercial musical that I am new to develop, which I'm really, really excited about, which I also can't really talk about. And what else? Mostly that's a lot. I mean, I have stayed busy.
It's a lot.
So it's been good. I've been very lucky and very fortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. And so do you see yourself going forward sort of doing all of these things at different times? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I really have, and I don't think that I understood this about myself as an artist, but because I would do theater, I would do film. I've associate produced a film. I've acted in a film. As I say, I directed a short film. I've directed theater. I do lots of writing. I'm currently actually writing a book. I've just begun putting an outline together, working on a couple of chapters for that book. So I've always done different explore different parts of me. When I was young, going off to school, and I was sort of trying to decide which university to attend, my father said a fascinating thing to me, which I actually sort of now share with a lot of younger people that I see a similar behavior of, which is that, you are multi-talented, and you're going to have to decide where you place your talents and how much energy you put in each one of your talents. And I think in my case, I've been quite fortunate that I've been able to explore all of them. And I feel really lucky that that's just sort of who I am. And that I have platforms and support around me where I can work on a book and write poems and work on a film and work on theater.
Yeah.
And I have an amazing team of agents who, I call them up and I'm like, okay, I want to do this. I have this. And they're like, okay, get us back. Let's do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that helps too.
We have a question from Rhonda, I don't know if you can see these, Leah. Can you see them?
Oh, let me go over.
Who has been the favorite artist that you have worked with is the question.
Ooh, that's too hard to answer. Yeah. I've been so lucky. I've worked with such incredible, extraordinary people. I couldn't name just one. Yeah. And I would feel as if I named just one, I would be doing a disservice to all of the others. So I'm sorry, Rhonda, I can't really say just one, but there's so many. There are just so many. We're looking at a 23-year career here. So,
and we have a question from Ava. What drew you to directing?
So, when I was working, I knew let me go back. When I was a child, every weekend, I would move furniture around in my room. I would put my bed in different configurations in my bureau, and I was constantly moving furniture. And if I were allowed, I would have moved furniture in the living room, which I probably did and just don't remember. And I was always sort of in, dance class. I was allowed to choreograph, and I was choreographing moments, and in music class, I was creating songs. And so I was always sort of doing everything that makes a director. But when I went to Penn and I discovered that you could actually direct, and that there was this thing called directing, I remember I was working at Crossroads Theater Company at the time, and it was with Ricardo Kahn, who was the artistic director at the time. And we were working at the Ford's Theater, and we went out afterwards, and I was working as a dramaturgical associate to the great Shelby Jiggets, I think. And I said to Rick, he said, well, what do you want to do? And I burst into tears, and I said, I just want to go to Yale Drama and direct. And he said, well, why don't you apply? And I said, oh, okay. But in my mind, it felt so far away, and so inaccessible, and just took, someone who believed in me at the time to say, just do it. And so I did. And, I had never directed before. I directed a reading for Crossroads, and 2 readings. I think Elizabeth Alexander actually was one of the readings where she was reciting her poetry, and I luckily got in. And so that was really when I realized I can do this. This is something I can make a living doing, and love what I do. So
yeah. All right, I think we have time for one more question from Tyranda. Is there a recent book or a favorite book that you would like to bring to the stage once the new normal presents itself post-COVID?
Ooh. That's a great question. I don't know. I'd have to think about that one, Tyranda. I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, there's so many books that I've read over the break. There's one book that I absolutely fell in love with, Memorial Drive, that I worked on adapting for screen that Sony has picked up the rights to. But I was thinking to myself, that would be a really interesting play. So not that I necessarily would want to bring it to stage once it's already been turned into a film or a TV show, but I think that's something that just comes to mind off the bat.
Yeah.
But you know what it's like. You want to bring everything to the stage always.
Yeah. So. But somehow it makes a lot of sense to me that you would be a person who would have a brilliant idea about that and make that happen. Yeah.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you.
Well, I think we're actually a little bit over time. So I'm sad to say, I think we should wrap up. I want to thank everyone who is with us for joining us. And thank you, Leah C. Gardiner, for spending time with us and sharing your wisdom and your artistry. It's such a pleasure and such a treat. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure and a treat and more. I've loved it. Thank you. All right.
We'll say bye-bye.
Okay. Be well. Okay. Yeah. Ciao, ciao. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.